Hello and welcome to Dr. Harry's Healthy Corner, Wednesday at 7:30. So glad to see you guys again. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about osteoporosis, the other silent disease. I want you to go along with me here a little bit here. Now, imagine 10, 15, 20 years from now, imagine yourself. Are you walking tall, shoulders all tossed back, and standing up straight? Or have you lost an inch or so in height? Do you find yourself slouching over a little bit? Do you have aches and pains? Does the spinal cord, the vertebrae in your spine hurt? Are you able to stand tall? Are you in a hospital with a broken hip? Now, of course, none of those scenarios appeal to any of us, but that can happen with the silent condition called osteoporosis. So what is osteoporosis? What is osteoporosis? Well, osteoporosis basically refers to the thinning of the bones. And ultimately, this is how bones work. Bones tend to break down and remodel, break down and remodel. So basically, it's removing old cells and rebuilding it with new cells. And in our 20s, that goes super well, right? So we're building, and so that tends to be when we have the strongest bones of our lives, is usually in our 20s, because at that point the rebuilding outdoes the breaking down, and so that usually then happens. But when we hit that magical age of 30, what tends to happen is that the breaking down tends to outweigh the building up, and so it is that point in time when we start losing bone mass. Now, we may not notice it if we did a study at that time, because the rate of loss is very slow, but usually by the time we hit 50 years of age and greater, that's when we tend to have issues with bone loss. So interestingly enough, women over the age of 45 tend to spend more days in the hospital from conditions from osteoporosis than diabetes, heart attacks, or even breast cancer. So as you can see, osteoporosis is really a significant issue. So the concern about osteoporosis, of course, is an increased risk of fractures. And fractures actually can increase our risk of dying as we get older, and also significantly can compromise our way of living. So let's talk a little bit of what are some risk factors for osteoporosis. Well, some things we cannot control is age. As we age, we do tend to lose bone mass. Sex, women are more susceptible to osteoporosis than men. Race, Asian Americans and Caucasians tend to be a little bit more susceptible to osteoporosis, but nobody is exempt. Please do not think that anyone is exempt. If we have a smaller body build, we tend to be more prone. If we have a family history, we may be more likely to develop osteoporosis as well. So there are some conditions, some medical conditions that can predispose us to osteoporosis. So those are things like thyroid issues. If your thyroid is hyperfunctioning, then what happens then? It can lead to osteoporosis or osteopenia. And so other conditions, eating disorders, nutritional deficiencies, calcium deficiency, vitamin D deficiency. If you've had gastric surgery that removes part of the stomach or the intestinal region, you may also be more prone to osteoporosis. Some medicines, actually, like steroids, and medicines that are very commonly used for reflux symptoms for an extended period of time, can actually increase our risk for osteoporosis, because it causes the stomach, it leads to the decreased ability to absorb the nutrients necessary for strong and healthy bones, and that involves calcium and magnesium as well. So if someone is underweight, they're more prone to osteoporosis. If someone is overweight, they may be more prone to osteoporosis as well. So those are some of the conditions that can predispose us to osteoporosis. osteoporosis. And again, no one is exempt from osteoporosis. And interestingly enough, with osteoporosis, the vertebrae in the back, or the backbone as it's commonly referred to, do you know that those can spontaneously collapse and just break? And that is how we tend to lose height as we get older. So when those collapse, they're the ones that actually help to contribute to our height. Then we can become shorter, or worse yet, we can develop that little curvature in our back as well. And so that makes us not only look older, but interferes with our balance as well. And so it makes us predisposed to falling. And in some instances, when the bones are so weak, even the hip bone can spontaneously break, causing that person to fall. Or any minor falls can also lead to a fracture. And most common fractures, again, we know about that can cause significant issues are hip fractures. Studies and research tells us that an elderly person after a hip fracture in 1 to 2 years may die from a complication of that hip fracture, and it also significantly decreases your quality of life as well. But I call it the other silent condition, because oftentimes prior to a fracture, we do not experience any symptoms at all. So there are usually not any symptoms for osteoporosis, although sometimes we may experience some aches and pains in the bone. But generally speaking, we usually do not experience symptoms until that there's a fracture. And so that's why screening is usually recommended as we get older, to monitor the quality and density of our bones. Other thing that may predispose us to osteoporosis is inflammation. We know that inflammation predisposes us to things like heart disease and strokes, and even diabetes and weight gain. But interestingly enough, inflammation can also increase our risk of osteoporosis. That's really crazy, because that inflammation just seems to impact everything that we do, and inflammation seems to contribute to almost every chronic condition that there is. So that is something to be aware of, and that's why lifestyle is so important in all of these conditions that I've been talking about. So now that we know some of what the risk factors of osteoporosis, and we are aware of really bone strength and density, what we want to know now at this point is, are there things that we can do to enhance the strength of our bones? Because as we get older, and for women especially, menopausal, because hormonal decrease in men and women can lead to osteoporosis. So as we get older, these are things that we need to consider really incorporating into our daily routine, as much as brushing our teeth. So one of the things I want to talk about, of course, is exercise. So it's important to do resistance training. And believe it or not, even walking is considered a resistance training. So you want to have some pull and onto the bone, so that the bone can react by becoming stronger. And I also would want to encourage flexibility exercises, because flexibility helps us to maintain our balance. So these incorporate balance exercises, and because we tend to have a little bit of a wobbly balance as we get older, that predisposes us to falling, and that's really not conducive with osteoporosis. So the other thing that we want to talk about is eating an anti-inflammatory diet. And as everyone knows, what is my favorite diet? The Mediterranean way of eating. And I hate to use the word diet, but it's the Mediterranean way of eating that really incorporates a lot of anti-inflammatory foods, a high amount of vegetables and fruits. It eliminates certain foods, but again, you can have whole grains, and it's really a well-balanced way of eating. The other thing I want to encourage is, please eliminate sodas and diet drinks, because they have also been shown to increase risk of fractures. And lifestyle habits such as smoking also increases your risk of developing osteoporosis, or if you do have a little thinning of the bones, it makes that worse. Excessive alcohol use also falls into that category as well. So these are all changes that we would want to make if we've been diagnosed with osteopenia. Now, the difference between osteopenia and osteoporosis: osteopenia shows a little thinning of the bones, and osteoporosis, the bones become significantly porous and brittle and can break more easily. So other things that we want to consider is having your vitamin D level evaluated, because vitamin D is very, very important in maintaining healthy bones, because it helps to incorporate the minerals such as calcium into building bone density. There's been some studies of magnesium and vitamin K as well as being significantly important in helping us to maintain strong bones. And our quality of protein also is important. As we get older, we tend to eat less proteins for a variety of reasons, and sometimes the protein in our diet may be deficient, and that can contribute to osteoporosis. So the Mediterranean diet encourages a good balance of all of those things. So should you take calcium supplementation? Well, that's been debated. We can get the majority of calcium. If we can get the majority of calcium from our foods, that of course would be the best route. So we want to do like salmon and sardines with the soft bones in for sardines. And of course, green leafy vegetables are really an important source of this. And of course, you can supplement as well. It's recommended not to go over 2,000 milligrams total daily. So other things that we would want to consider is that when we talk about exercising, we want to avoid a sedentary lifestyle, right? Because that encourages inflammation and also interferes with balance. So we don't want to have that. So resistance training, if you already have osteoporosis, please be careful with twisting exercises, because depending on the stage of osteoporosis you are in, you could suffer a spontaneous fracture. So speak with your doctor if you do have significant osteoporosis as to what kind of things you might want to avoid when exercising. But it's really important to put stress on those bones so that they can start responding and becoming stronger. Some people do hormonal replacement therapy. Again, that is something you have to discuss with your physician to see if you are a candidate for hormonal replacement therapy. There's some up and coming studies that's really fascinating, currently very, very much in the early stages, but very encouraging with osteoporosis. There are some medications that are commonly used as well. All of these are things that you can discuss with your physician to see if you are a candidate for any of these things. But as with lifestyle, the lifestyle modifications that are really important in this is that we want to exercise, we want to eat anti-inflammatory foods, we want to make sure we have adequate vitamin D, adequate magnesium, adequate vitamin K, which again we all get from our green leafy vegetables, and it's important to be aware of osteoporosis just because of the mortality and morbidity, and that basically means it can significantly impact your quality of life. For something that is so silent, it really can cause a significant amount of issues, and it can be responsible for good deal of hospitalization, and also can interfere with your retirement years, which should really be fun. So this is what I really wanted to say about osteoporosis. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or message me on Facebook. You can also feel free to visit my YouTube channels if you've missed any of my presentations that you want to catch up on. And I will not be able to see you next week because I'll be taking my youngest off to college. So I'll be experiencing the empty nest syndrome. But I won't be able to be here with you next week. I'll miss you terribly, but I will see you the week after. And if there are topics that you're interested in, then please feel free to send me a message and let me know what they are, and I will be ever so happy to speak on those topics. So thank you for joining me today. If you're not able to join me live, then of course you can catch it on replay. Bye-bye now. I just want to take a chance to read some of these comments, so I'm going to be looking down for a little bit. Hi everybody who are able to join me. So until next time, bye-bye.